Good afternoon, everyone out there on YouTube. My name is Jared. This is my channel, Mazda B3K. In this episode, we are going to replace the spark plugs and wires on my brother's 1995 Gulfstream Sunsport RV. Without further ado, let's get started. So, as of the making of this video, I haven't done a will it run or anything else for this guy. This is a brand new purchase. But the key thing here is that this big old beast of an RV has a Chevy Big Block 454 TBI, meaning throttle body injected. There's your fuel injectors. Yay. And it still has a distributor. Boo. Anyway, so we are having issues getting this guy to run. It's running rough. It's stuttering. It's doing all sorts of random junk. So what we are going to do, just to maximize success, and because we weren't sure if the original plugs and wires that were in this thing were actually really solid, we're going to go ahead and change out the plugs and wires. Now, the way you want to do this is from the inside, from after you take the doghouse off, which, if you're not familiar with full-size vans, RVs, doghouse is the nickname for the big cover that goes over your inside vehicle access to the engine because of where the engines wind up sitting on these vehicles. So you take that off, and then you will have access all along the sides to each set of 4 spark plugs, because this is an 8-cylinder engine. So we'll just get our tools and we will get started. First up is going to be the removal of the spark plugs. But before we get into that, normally you would use a 5/8 spark plug socket. But what I have found after working on this engine is that there are brackets that will get caught on the end of the spark plug socket where it is set up as a hex so that you can put a wrench on it. It gets stuck. So I just use a standard 5/8. And you can get away with that because also the way these plugs are angled, get my finger here so you can see one. The way these are angled is they point down. So they naturally want to stay in the socket and will come out. You don't need the magnet or the little rubber cap that normally a spark plug socket has in order to get the spark plug out. I have found no issues just using a regular old deep well 5/8. So that's what I'm going to use. As I mentioned a moment ago, we have 4 plugs to each side. So we're going to get a plug out, get to it. Alright, I got some light on the situation. The front driver right here, this is going to be cylinder number 1. So get the wire out, just grab and wiggle. Be careful of this. This is a heat shield, so be careful you don't catch yourself on it. But once that's out of the way, you're going to need your 5/8. Get it in there. And then be careful when you remove. If someone over tightened the plugs, or sometimes it happens from time, you got to be careful you don't crack it when you remove it. Now, I've had this plug out a couple times already, so I know it's not in there too tight. Now, to make things easier, I take the ratchet out, just spin it out by hand. Alright, do we have it? Yeah, we got it. Alright, let's take a look at this guy. So, looking at the electrode, it doesn't look that worn, but the plug does look pretty badly fouled. So, should it still spark? Probably. But we want to give this thing the best chance possible because I have had fits trying to get this sucker to run. And that's probably because it's very finicky on the timing, but anyway. What was inside originally, the guy we bought this from, he had replaced the plugs with one that was the wrong temperature. But this is the correct plug, an AC Delco CR43T5. It's what my replacement plugs are. They're just new. This is a copper plug. It is what was stuck in this thing back in 1995. And honestly, if you're just doing regular stuff and you haven't done hotting up the ignition system any, copper plug's probably good for you. The iridiums don't really come into play until you have done some improvements to your ignition system. So we got this out. We'll just grab the new one. You see this one's got some dielectric grease on it. I'm pretty sure the new spark plugs I grabbed have a little bit of grease already in spark plug wires. I grabbed already have some grease on the boots, so I'm not worried about that. I'm just going to grab the new plug, get it installed. Give you guys a comparison. Old plug on right, new plug on left. So you can see the electrode is, like I said, it's not really worn. So this plug probably didn't run a lot. But you can also see just how much cleaner this one is than that one. This one's kind of fouled. This one's not. Like I said, this one probably still can fire. I can probably spark test it right now and it would be good. I'm not going to throw it away, but I'm just trying to give this the best chance I've got to get it to do something. I've really been struggling to get this thing to run reliably. So for putting it back in, it's pretty similar to removal. Just stick it back in. Be careful you don't point it down so you don't have a cap or anything that's holding your plug in, but get it lined up. Just start turning it clockwise. You'll feel it bite and start going in. Tighten it finger tight. Grab your ratchet and just give it a little, not too much, that's it. Not very tight. You over tighten these things, they will break on the way in or they'll break on the way out, and then you'll have to hire someone who specializes in boring these things out. Not very fun. Alright, so that is one, and now we just have 7 more to do. Same procedure. One other thing, didn't explicitly say it, but if you're only doing plugs, put your wire back on as you go so you don't lose your firing order. Or if you're still going to do wires, I'd still recommend that, so that way you don't have a bunch of dangly wires everywhere and you can keep track of things. So take a plug out, put a new plug in, put your wire back on. Alright, don't mind the background noise. My brother's doing checks on his generator right now. But here are the 8 plugs. We have 1, 3, 5, 7, 2, 4, 6, 8.
Okay, that's showing just about 60.
And the one thing you're seeing pretty consistently here is that the plugs are pretty fouled, but the electrodes really aren't that worn. So, and also, I think that's oil. It's a little concerning, but these weren't really that worn, but they'd been in there a long time. Note the rust. And they're pretty oily, pretty fouled, so I'm hoping the new plugs will give us something the old ones didn't. So, I mean, they weren't that expensive. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is change out wires. Alrighty, so when you break out a new pack of wires, make sure you do the following. You kind of group them according to size. So that way, when you take a wire off, you can compare it to what you got, grab one of the appropriate length, and go ahead and replace it. So broadly, you can see there are 2 groups here. There's really long, and that's going to be your guys that are further up towards the top, away from the distributor. So cylinders 1, 3, and 2, and 4. And then you've got a clump of shorter ones, and that's going to be cylinders 5, 7, and 6, and 8. And then this really short guy here is the one that goes from the ignition coil to the distributor cap. So I'm going to start switching out wires, but at the same time, I'm also going to check my firing order and make sure that I have my wires placed correctly on the cap. You don't need to do this if your vehicle's already running just fine and you're doing a tune-up. You just need to replace the wires one by one, and as long as you don't change the wire order, you're good to go. In my case, I have an engine that really doesn't want to run, so I'm going to check my firing order and make sure I've got the right wire going to the right position on the distributor cap. Alright, so you can see I've taken the wire off number 1, going down to number 1. So, just
Take the load off.
Make sure you hear that good click, make sure you're in, and then you're going to route your wire. In this case, I'm just going to I'll do more better routing once I have these more complete, but you're going to want to, apologize for the lighting here, but basically you're going to want to push this in until you feel it click, just like that, and that's one wire. So there you go, and you just keep doing it until you've replaced all 8, well, technically 9, because you can replace this wire as well. Okay, and this should be your final result. You should have all your new wires in. You should have heard everything click when you inserted it. Be careful when you are working on inserting the spark plug side, because of the little heat shields around where the plugs go. It can feel like the boot is getting seated, and it's not. You got to get it lined up, push in until you feel it, hear it click as it locks on to the head of the spark plug, to make sure that indeed you're going to have full spark. So I checked my firing order. It looks good. Got my wires ran. I'll probably do a zip tie or 2 to tidy up. But it's all in. And now for me, I'm going to move on to working on timing. But for you guys, you're done. Congratulations. Go have a beer or something. And that will be a successful repair. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video where we changed out the plugs and wires on my brother's 1995 Gulfstream Sunsport. So if this video helped you, if it's helping you get the job done, please like, share, and subscribe. That does help grow the channel. Please also leave a comment. I like to read them, I like to learn from them, and I like to reply to them. And remember guys, I make the mistakes so you don't have to. I'll see you guys next episode.